Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Today is Saturday, August 30th, 2025. I came across a great list of 8 things a person must evaluate to rebuild their life. To rebuild one's own life at any age, I've come to see what keeps us stuck and what can set us free. I worked in healthcare for 30 years, 19 of those years in direct patient contact with all kinds of people, dozens every day. We often have to tear down the old things that are standing in our way before we can build something better. Here are 8 things worth dismantling before you can rebuild your life, because you cannot build something real on a foundation of lies, excuses, and outdated beliefs. 1. The relationship with your past self. You have loyalty to a version of yourself that no longer serves you. The person you were who made those choices long ago. The person you were who thought they knew how relationships worked. The person who built a life based on what seemed safe or smart at the time. The version of you that once made perfect sense but no longer does. But here's what keeps you stuck. You keep trying to be the person you thought you were. You keep making decisions based on who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And you think, well, I've spent all this time building this study path or life. I cannot change now. Or, I've always been the type of person who does things this way. This is the sunk cost fallacy in human form. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to continue investing in a decision or project based on the amount of resources already spent, rather than on future benefits. This often leads to irrational decision-making, as individuals feel compelled to justify past investments, even when it would be more beneficial to abandon the endeavor. Just because you've invested decades in being someone does not mean you have to keep being that person if it's not working anymore. Rebuilding your life requires grieving the person you used to be, not because that person was wrong, but because their time is over. The priorities that might have made sense then may be suffocating you now. The identity that got you this far might be the very thing preventing you from going further. And you don't owe your past self anything except gratitude for getting you there. But you owe your future self the courage to let your old self go. 2. The story about why you cannot change. Every one of us has a story. A personal narrative that explains why we are the way we are and why we turned out the way we did. And in some cases, that story is even true. Maybe it's about your childhood, your studies, your relationships, your job, or the way the world seems to have changed. Maybe you've been burned, betrayed, dismissed, or taken advantage of, and now you're left carrying the weight of it all. But here's where that story can quietly become a trap. When it stops being an explanation and starts becoming a permission slip to stay stuck, and if we're not careful, the story becomes an identity. And over time, we start defending it instead of outgrowing it. And I've done this myself, getting so caught up in the reasons things were hard or unfair, or did not go my way, that I did not realize I was building my future around my past. I was not lying to myself, but I was definitely limiting myself. There's a point in every person's life where they have to decide, do I want to hold on to the story, or do I want to build something better? Because you cannot do both. The people who actually rebuild, who change, grow, reconnect with themselves, they are not the ones who had the fewest setbacks. They are the ones who stopped letting their setbacks define what was still possible. Your true story matters, and yet it's not your destination. It's the ground you will stand on, and you get to decide what you build on it next. 3. Your attachment to who you think you should be. This one cuts deep because it's not just about your own expectations. It's about all the voices you've internalized over the years. Your parents telling you what you should want. Your culture defining success. Your younger self making promises about the kind of person you'd become. The split between what you actually want and what you believe you're supposed to want is draining you slowly. You're living someone else's blueprint and wondering why it feels hollow. So maybe you're supposed to want this, but you'd rather do that. Maybe you're supposed to prioritize financial security over something else. But what you really want is time and freedom. The I shoulds in your head have a bias. They're someone else's values masquerading as your own. And you cannot rebuild an authentic life on an inauthentic foundation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Disappointing other people's expectations of who you should be is the price of becoming who you actually are. And some people won't understand that. Some will be upset. Some will try to pull you back into the box they built for you. Let them be disappointed. Their comfort with your conformity is not worth your misery. 4. The illusion that you have unlimited time. Neil Peart wrote the lyric, "When we are young, wandering the face of the earth, wondering what our dreams might be worth, learning that we're only immortal for a limited time." There's nothing more dangerous than thinking you still have plenty of time. You do not. Not for the things that matter. Every year you wait, the window narrows, not just physically, but emotionally. Energy, momentum, clarity, they fade and at some point later turns into never. More so after several decades of life, you do not get to pretend that you're in the warm-up lap anymore. And this is not meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you up. Because once you truly accept the clock is running, your priorities become crystal clear. You stop wasting time on things that do not matter. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop treating your life like a rough draft. The people who rebuild successfully are not the ones who had more time. They are the ones who finally admitted how little time they had and started acting accordingly. Every day you spend living someone else's life is a day you do not get back. Every month you postpone what matters is a month stolen from your future self. Every year you wait for permission is a year you could have been free. The urgency is not panic, it's clarity. And when you know time is finite, you get very selective about how you spend it. 5. The fantasy that change happens gradually. We like to imagine that growth will come gently, one small upgrade at a time, a slight adjustment here, a minor improvement there. We tell ourselves that we can ease into a new way of life without disrupting the old one. But that's not how real change usually works. Real change is usually disruptive. It breaks routines. It ends relationships. It shakes up identities. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is make a clean break. Quit the job, set the boundary, speak the truth. That changes everything. And I'm not advocating for reckless decisions. I'm talking about the courage to acknowledge when incremental change is not enough. When the gap between who you are and who you need to become is so wide that baby steps will not bridge it. The fantasy of gradual change is really a fantasy about avoiding discomfort. But discomfort is the price of transformation. The caterpillar does not gradually become a butterfly by adding wings to its existing structure. It has to completely dissolve and rebuild from the inside out. And your life might need the same kind of radical reconstruction. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something right with you that's been suppressed for too long. 6. The belief that the right hack will save you. You consume content like it's your job. Podcasts, books, video courses. You're looking for the system, the framework, the productivity hack that will finally turn everything around. And you call it personal development. But really, it's become sophisticated procrastination. Here's what most of us have to learn the hard way. There's no morning routine, supplement stack, or time management system that will rebuild your life for you. Growth is not a hack you can download and install. It's not a formula you can follow to guarantee results. Growth is a decision, then a dozen uncomfortable actions that you cannot delegate to an app or outsource to a coach, or even a therapist, or an advisor. It's having the conversation you've been avoiding. It's saying no to things you're used to saying yes to. It's showing up differently in relationships, even when people do not like the new version of you. You already know what you need to do. The information is not the problem. The implementation is, and that cannot be hacked. It can only be done. So stop researching your life so much and start living it. The perfect system does not exist, but imperfect action does. And imperfect action beats perfect planning most of the time. One needs to be open to improvisation. 7. Your loyalty to people who do not support your growth. This might be the hardest one because these are not necessarily bad people. They are people who benefited from the old version of you, the one that was safe, predictable, self-sacrificing. They liked you better when you did not have opinions, boundaries, or needs of your own. And I mean needs, not wants. So, as you start to change, some of these relationships will resist. They will guilt trip you about being selfish. They will reminisce about how you used to be. They will make you feel like growing means betraying them. But here's what they are really saying. We preferred you when you were smaller. And that's not love. That's just convenience for them. Real relationships can handle your growth. They might be uncomfortable at first, but they will adjust. The ones that cannot handle the real you were never really yours to begin with. They were relationships with your performance, not your person. Rebuilding your life might mean disappointing people who benefited from your self-sacrifice. It might mean losing friends who only liked you when you were struggling. It might mean creating distance from family members who need you to stay broken to feel better about themselves. This is not cruel. It is necessary. You cannot become who you are meant to be while carrying people who need you to stay who you were. 8. The fantasy that everyone else has it figured out. You look around and you assume you're the only one struggling. Everyone else seems confident, successful, content with their choices. They post their highlights on social media while you're living in your behind-the-scenes reality. Yet, in my almost 50 years of life, and 30 years working in healthcare, 19 of which were direct patient contact with people from all walks of life, I noticed everyone is struggling in their own way. Some are just quieter about it. The guy with what looks like the perfect marriage is having problems he's not talking about. The successful executive is questioning everything. The confident neighbor is dealing with anxiety and panic attacks she doesn't admit to everyone. This comparison trap keeps you feeling worse about yourself and waiting to feel ready before you make changes. You think you need to have it all figured out before you start rebuilding. But nobody has it all figured out. Nobody feels completely ready. Nobody has all the answers before they begin. The people who rebuild their lives are not the ones who had more clarity. They are the ones who started anyway. They are the ones who said, I don't know exactly where this leads, but I know where staying here leads, and I cannot accept that anymore. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop comparing your inner experiences to other people's outer presentation. Everything is not as it seems. Stop postponing your life until you're certain about the outcome. Rebuilding starts with accepting uncertainty and moving forward anyway. Because the alternative, staying stuck in a life that does not fit, is the only real failure. I hope this helps you. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, be well, everybody.